Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I'm so grateful to have Margaret Izard here. She is an award-winning author of the Stones of Iona series, a captivating blend of romance, fantasy, and historical intrigue set in the mystical landscapes of Scotland. Known for her deep dedication to historical research, Margaret weaves real artifacts and legends into her stories, bringing a rich, authentic feel to her paranormal romance novels. A mother of triplets and a passionate storyteller, Margaret's journey in writing reflects resilience, creativity, and a love for exploring the unknown. Her latest releases include Stone of Lust and Thistle in the Mistletoe and Stone of Hope on the way in the early 2025. Wow, you've been busy, Margaret. I'm so
I
happy to have you
have.
back on my show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be back with you, and it's wonderful to see you again. And congratulations on your accomplishments. I know you recently did a TED Talk, and I think that that's just amazing. Just being able to do something like that, I think that's great. But I am really excited to be back on your show.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. And congratulations, by the way, on your recent award. Amazing. You actually won the Reader's Favorite Fall 2024 Honorable Mention Award in the Romance Fantasy Sci-Fi Division for Stone of Love. How does it actually feel to achieve such recognition, especially out of thousands of entries?
It was really spectacular. It was wonderful. I was so nervous entering. And it is a prestigious award. They are featuring it this within the next couple weekends at the Miami Book Fair, so it'll be in the booth that they have there for readers' favorite. Honorable mention. It's fourth place, but it's a place. It's an accomplishment. It's someone seeing your work for what it is and recognizing the hard work that you put into it. That was the first book I ever wrote. It went through so many revisions in order to get to a condition to be published. So the fact that someone recognized all that hard work I put into it for years, it's really nice, and it really helped moving forward, going with the next books that are coming out, because we've published book 3 in the series. We've got the Christmas companion book. Book 4 is coming. Book 5 is in edits right now. I'm finishing and up my last edits on book 5, which is Stone of Doubt. Getting that back to the editor. That's going to come out in 2025, and we're just going to keep moving forward with the 7-book series. And I'm just very excited about it.
That's amazing. And how are you actually balancing promotion efforts, especially for the Christmas companion book that's coming out pretty soon?
Oh man, this has been, I say it's one of the greatest challenges of my life, and everyone's like, but wait, you had triplets, and there's just very different. It's a very different challenge. Stone of Lust came out in late October. Thistle and the Mistletoe, which is the Christmas companion book, came out early November. They were 2 weeks apart by the day. So it was, there was a lot of front end promotions on Stone of Lust. And now that we're into the Christmas season, we're really focusing on this little Christmas companion book. It focuses on a couple that's featured in the past from Stone of Love. So it's kind of it takes place back in the 17th century. It's enemies to lovers. It occurs before the main character in the first book time travels back to that time. So you get kind of a glimpse of how this couple that we talk about and mention, but we don't really get to know very well in the first book. We get to know how they met, how they fell in love, and how their relationship became. There's some interesting, with each of my books, as I get along further in the series, there's some Easter eggs, there's some little tidbits. A lot of reviewers, even though I do write the books as standalones, there's just enough back history, backstory. If you pick up book 3, you pick up book 4, there's just enough there to get you through that book. But a lot of my reviewers say that the stories are so much richer if they're read in order. And I think that's because there's so many things that tie back together. And that's been a lot of fun in writing the series, is, how things connect, how fate connects. A lot of these plot lines are intertwined by fate and destiny. And it's been a lot of fun to write that.
That's amazing. Now, there's also Stone of Doubt on the way in 2025 too.
Yes, it's in edits
Yes.
right now, and it's coming in 2025. And I've finished the 7-book series, so we're working with my publisher to get all these books out. There's another Christmas companion book for next year. that's already written. So I'm just very excited about finally getting to share all these rich stories with readers.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and just ask this question.
Okay.
How, I mean, it's hard for me to write one book. Are you being guided spiritually, or like are you just a superwoman? Because that's amazing. You already have another book for the Christmas series for next year. That's I'm just blown
Well,
away.
okay. The thing with the Christmas book was when I finished the first Christmas book, I wrote, I'd always thought that Roderick and Mary's story would be a Christmas story, and that's the couple from the past. Roderick is the identical ancestor that Colin from the future goes back and assumes his identity in order to, find a lost magic stone, a stone of Iona. And I always felt that their story was a Christmas story. And, I wrote it. I had to get it done pretty quickly to meet a deadline so that it would be in production and ready for this year. It's been over a year since I've written it. And it just seemed so natural that right after writing that book, I already knew what the next Christmas book was going to be. I already knew who it was going to be, what it was going to be about, where it fell in the timeline of things, what it was going to focus on. It takes place in Glasgow. It takes place directly after Culloden, which is a very interesting time to write about in Scotland because it's not a very happy time. And so it's a very nice journey of how the Scottish people have survived and thrived, into this day and age, and how their heritage has survived. And so that's like the beginnings of that. And it just, after I finished that first Christmas book, I was like, well, I'm here. I just might as well write it. I had it in my mind. I had it in my heart. I had it in my soul. And I could have waited, but it was there. And so I wrote it. And I think, that's answering your question is, um, I wanted to write in my 30s. I wasn't very confident about it. My writing itself wasn't very good. My stories were very imaginative, like, because they're very imaginative. They're very creative. Um, and I just wasn't ready for that. And so I set it aside. And it wasn't until I got, into my mid 50s that it was like, I really want to do this. So there's been some time to marinate this. It's sort of this concept of writing in Scotland and what I want, these stories I want to do, and what I want to include in it, and the fables and the fantasy. And it's been marinating, it's been fermenting for a while. So when you say, how do you manage this, or how do you write a book, it just kind of spits out of me. I don't know how I don't know how else. That sounds so awful, but it's that I'll share a quick story. I edited Stone of Love for a very long time before it was picked up by a publisher. It queried for about 2.5 years before I could pick up a publisher. And I was very persistent about wanting a traditional publisher rather than self-publishing. During that time, I wrote book 2 and book 3, which is Stone of Fear and Stone of Lust, because it just kept pouring out of me. I was editing, and I had started working on the second series, which isn't published yet, that ties to this one. It's Shape-Shifting Dragons. I started working on those books. I'd finished the first book, Damien's book, which is one of the shape-shifting dragons you meet in Stone of Love. And I started writing the second book in the Dragon series, and I had to stop because I had to go back and edit Stone of Love, take it through a complete massive edit, chop it apart, put it back together again, and get it to a condition that a publishing company would be interested in. So I had to stop writing, and for over a month, and that was hard because I was this other book about the second brother and the shape-shifting dragons was just eating at me. It was, I had, and I had to spit it out. I had to get it out, but I had to be disciplined and focus on another book. So I kept, every time I got an idea, I just wrote a note, wrote another note, wrote a dialogue, wrote a conversation, wrote this, wrote that. So by the time I hit the end where I was ready to go back to writing it, the whole book was practically written, because I'd written all these notes. So I guess the answer is it's had so much time to ferment. It's just, I've got so much to say, and I've got so many things to write, and it's very exciting. So it's a labor of love, I guess you could say.
Oh, you're living your purpose. My goodness. Yes. When it's like aligned and it's just coming to you and you're just wanting to write, you're supposed to be doing this. Now, any
Yes.
future thoughts about maybe having it in film in
Oh,
production?
I'd love to do that. It's funny. I've been told on a few occasions that from people who have read the whole series so far, They've said that it's well written for film because each book is not only a love story. There's a couple, there's a love story, there's romance, there's a happily ever after at the end, but each book focuses on searching for a stone. So there's two plot lines that intertwine and weave in and out of each other, but there's this underlying overall plot line that goes through the entire series that is searching for these stones. There's the good stones, and the evil stones hunt the good stones, and they're, and so the evil people have the evil stones, and you've got to find all the stones by the end of the series, kind of thing, in order to bring balance to the realms, whether, the Fae and the human realm. So there's this driving force throughout the entire series that drives you to the end of finding all the stones. And so it's kind of neat because that's a season. Each one of those books is a season, and so it's kind of set up that way. And the other interesting part of it is that I have so much performing arts experience, between the dance and the theater, and I've done some TV work. I kind of write that way. It's has some, I've been told my descriptions are very nice. They're very descriptive. It's very immersive in my writing, and I think it's because I look at it as if I'm a director and my little characters are little actors, and they have their scene, and we have our props, and and if you're familiar with theater and acting, and the process that you go through with that, if you write that way, then it leads itself into the performing arts because it's already written that way. Some of my transitions are even written as if I'm imagining this film that's going about. So yeah, I've been told that I'd love to see that happen. I mean, oh my goodness, I would just die. But yeah, I've been told that it's kind of set up pretty well for TV or cable. So
I'd say I'd be the first to watch. So neat. Oh, I'm just thinking about like how I mean, I was a big fan of Lord of the Rings. I mean, I know Never Ending Story was just one one movie or one. Actually, there was a number two, but I'm so into fantasy, paranormal, and especially romance. I love it all. Now, the Brooch of Lorne is such a unique element to the Stone of Lust. Can you actually share the story behind this genuine artifact and its mystical reputation?
well, the brooch of Lorne it's a real artifact. It is a artifact from the McDougal family, which is the clan that is the main characters that carry us through this first series of the Stones of Iona, and it's one of three that were made, probably back in like the 16th century. They carried stones, and so it's a man's brooch that goes on his tartan. And there's I forgot the name of the other two. There's two. One's in a museum, and two are in private collections. But you can literally Google brooch of Lorne and see a picture of it, and it's actually a very amazing piece. It's a very large brooch. It's a very heavy brooch. It carries two stones and has a separate secret compartment inside. And when it was found, the secret compartment inside had bones and material, and other little fragments that were like herbs or something. And then there were two stones that carried on top, and then it closes on top of that. And they were, all three brooches were considered to be very mystical, and brought sort of extra powers to the person who wore it. The interesting thing about the brooch of Lorne, it was made by the Lord of Lorne, which is featured in Stone of Lust. Colin's sister, Annis Lee, goes back to the Viking times, and the Lord of Lorne, who is her ancestor, is there. And he actually makes it later than the story, but the brooch is created by him, and carried on with the McDougals for a very long time. Now, at some point in time, Robert the Bruce had it, and the McDougals got it back. They got in a fight with him, and they tore it off. There's a very dramatic story where they tore it off his tartan, and they got it back, and so it sits in a museum. That's the one that sits in the museum, is the brooch of Lorne. But it was interesting because I didn't know. I do a lot of research. The history is accurate. Most all the history of my books is very accurate. It takes a lot of research to do that. And there was a plot line that I was having trouble with Stone of Lust. I wanted the older brother to come back to save the sister, and he needed a purpose, and I couldn't quite figure it all out. And so I thought, whenever I get in a bind like that, I just start reading history. Something inspires me. You see something, it sparks something. You're like, oh, but wait. So the day that I found Brooch of Lorn, I just felt it was a gift from God, or, it was like it was just it was placed there on purpose. I was meant to find this because and I don't want to give away the plot line. If you haven't read the book, it's a really neat plot line. You'll see the Brooch of Lorn again in the series. This is just the first time you'll see it. But it really was a gift because it carries stones and the magical, mystical properties that it carries, and the wearer and what they can do with it. It just provided so many opportunities. And when I found it, I was just so excited because it was just this gift that dropped in my lap. I mean, I was talking about it for days, and my husband was like, "Fine, I get it. It's a magical brooch," because I just talked his ear off about it. But it was really a gift of research. It was just, and I'm having a lot of fun with it because this isn't the only book it's in.
Wow, amazing. Now, yeah, your books weave like so much history and mythology. Now, how do you actually balance historical accuracy with the fantasy and paranormal elements in your stories?
Actually, they feed on one another.
I
They really feed on one another. It's that folklore, the Scottish. There is just so much folklore and magic and mystic in the Scottish culture and their history that you can't talk about the Scottish culture and not talk about magic, fae, mystery. It all blends in, and it's all part of what they are as a people. And so it's so easy to write once you understand and you see it, and you start making these connections between the folklore, the history, the fantasy, and it just feeds within itself. And that's what makes it so enjoyable, but most times easy to write. I mean, I do hit blocks, but dig up some research, find something to do, and I find an answer. But yeah, it's it's very much a part of what they are as a people.
Now, what do your triplets say about your series?
Uh, they don't read it. I was asked in another interview, does anyone in your family read your books? And I write steamy scenes. So so yeah, they're rated R. It's not, not it's suitable for mature audiences only. And it was so funny because my response was, I think my brother and my sister would kind of be very uncomfortable with this. But my kids think it's kind of cool. They think it's great. They don't really read them, and that's okay. It's kind of like that. That's mom stuff. It's that's her thing again. And it's when I started writing, they had a hard time getting used to it. I had always been the beck and call mom up until I started writing. And so this concept that I wasn't going to drop everything and do something for them was just devastating. It was like, oh my God, mother. So now it's like that's her thing. That's her thing she does. They're excited, when every time I release a new book, there's a cake. There's
Oh, so
I
sweet.
yeah, I have a book birthday cake every time I do a new release, and so I'm always eating cake. And it was funny because recently I had two releases 2 weeks apart, and so they're like, cake again. So I was like, yeah, but yeah, they like it because they get cake. But it's so funny because they can't touch the cake. I bring the cake home, and it's here for a day before we get to eat it. And because I want to do this whole photo shoot, and I do this little video thing, or clips or something, pictures of me eating my birthday cake on release day. And it's so funny because it's like they're not allowed to touch it. And the last release was early November, a couple weeks ago, and so it was 2 or 3 days after the release, and so the cake was sitting in the kitchen, and no one had touched it yet. And it's chocolate, which my family, that's the favorite one, is chocolate. And it was so funny because I went up to my daughter and I'm like, you can have some cake. It's your cake. I can't touch it. And so I was like, well, I've released the book. You can eat it now. And so then it was like, yeah, it was because it's chocolate. She loves chocolate. I
Who
love chocolate
doesn't?
as a kid.
Who doesn't? I love chocolate. It's my favorite. Oh, so your stories emphasize the idea that fate leaves clues. What advice would you go ahead and give aspiring writers or even creatives about being open to inspiration and signs in their own journeys?
Oh yeah, life gets at you. It's that constant, you're beating yourself against time. You're trying to catch up. It's that feeling of always trying to catch up. I've got this other thing to do, or I've got, and there's times that you do have to stop. You do have to stop and look around because, you know, things, if I hadn't stopped and researched and looked at history when I was stuck, I wouldn't have found the Brooch-Lorne if I hadn't stopped and read, or so you've got to stop and listen. You've got to stop and look, and you got to stop and listen because you don't want to pass these things up. If you get so caught up in the rat race per se, you miss opportunities, and you miss, and whether you want to call it a message from God, fate telling you something, your guardian angel coming down, and it's everyone has their different belief systems and what they believe. And I love writing about that. I love writing about fate and destiny, and how you're meant to be in one place at one time in order to discover something about yourself, or about your destiny, or your purpose in life. Everything, that whole concept of everything happens for a reason. One of my favorite stories. This is absolutely one of my favorite stories. My husband and I went to Scotland a couple years ago, and I just contracted the first book. I had gone through edits. I was contracting the second book. I had planned the trip before I even got my publisher. And so when the contract came through, I was like, and was, quickly doing the, because I'd already booked the trip. So I was trying to figure out the edits, and then am I going to be in Scotland while I'm editing a book? That would be bad. So it all worked out, but we were in Scotland, and we had this whole thing planned out where I was going to visit the castles that I wrote about, the locations that I wrote about. And the last day of the trip, I had planned we'd stayed a couple extra days, and it was on purpose because I wanted to get to Tantallon Castle.
Mhm.
And that's where my dragon shapeshifters live. And it's on the East Coast. And we'd spent most of our trip on the West Coast. We'd started in Glasgow, we'd circled up into the Cairngorms, finished in Edinburgh. And so we kind of circled over to the Western Isles, and that's where the Dunstafnage, the other, and Donnelly, the other castles that I write about on in Oban, that are on the western shores where the Vikings were, and which is where the Lord of Lorne is. He was in Donnelly Castle, so we hadn't made it to the eastern coast, and so I wanted to go visit this other obscure castle ruin. And the second to last day of the trip was a free day for us, and it was raining, and we didn't have a lot to do, and we were trying to walk around and do this and do that, and we couldn't quite. We almost went out to Tantallon that day. We almost said, well, let's just take, because we were going to take the bus and go out and have a little picnic. That's a big thing there. Everyone goes out, sits in a field and has a picnic. Lots of people picnic in Scotland, and it's kind of fun. And we had planned on that. We had this long bus ride to get out there because we didn't have a rental car. And we had toured through all of Scotland with a tour group, so which is nice because you don't have to worry about anything. You get on a bus and everyone does everything for you, and then you get off at your destination. But the day before, we almost went. We almost went out to the castle, and we didn't. So we took a bus tour. So the next day we get out, we get on our bus, we do a little bus ride out there, and we get out there. And it turns out that the castle had been closed for 2 years. They had taken advantage of the pandemic. They had closed the castle, trying to do some renovations. There were parts of the area of the castle that were closed off because rocks are falling. But that very day was the first day that they had opened after being closed for 2 years. So if I had, because I was anxious the day before, oh, let's just get everything done. And I was anxious about trying to, get my trip and get everything done. I would have missed an opportunity of seeing the castle. And I would have come back the next day. I would have made my husband come back. But, it was just nice, and we got there and they're like, oh yeah, we've been closed 2 years. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Oh, our computer's down. You get in for free. It was just,
Wow.
so you get, yeah, so it was really very nice. And the people there, they had a number of different people there that had waited 2 years for the castle to reopen. That was their job. they talk about the castle, they walk around. There was a bagpiper, he played flute, he did, you know, the Scottish Historical Society does this wonderful job about making sure that the stories that are part of what each of their sites are shared. And they every time you go to one of these places, there's 5 to 10 people standing there to tell you about it that are experts. And so these people were so happy that it was back open again, and you know, and it looks out over the North Sea. It's on a big, beautiful cliff. We sat in the main courtyard and had a picnic lunch. You know, we'd stopped and bought some little sandwiches, and we sat and just had this lovely picnic lunch overlooking the North Sea. And there's a rock island out. I forgot what it's called, but there's this rock island that's out there that's really nice. And it was just, you know, if I hadn't listened to fate, you know, had been too anxious about trying to get things done, I might have missed an opportunity. And so I think that, especially in this day and age, I think you need to stop and listen. You need to stop and look. You need to stop and listen, because you're in the right place at the right time for a reason. So
Right.
so I stop and listen.
Oh, it's beautiful. And it's so true. Like I always get more clarity when I do stop and listen. And it's mostly out in nature too. That's where I go for my information. I just go hike, go up the hill, take a couple deep breaths, and then just ask God, universe, source, guide me, and then please give me clarity. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, light bulb moment. Now I know what to do next. So you're
Yeah,
so
yeah.
right.
I take a break. You know, I go sit in the backyard, go sit outside, make it a point to sit outside. I have to make it a point to stare. You know, I look at a screen so much, and especially if I'm drafting and writing something, you know, and I'm hacking away at the computer. You know, I make it a point to get outside, look out at the horizon, spend some time with nature, take those deep breaths, you know, and just take a moment to yourself. And you know, my husband and I talk about that a lot, that we get so caught up in the rat race. You know, it's work, it's this, it's that, it's the kids. We got this to do, we got that to do. It's so funny. We've been so busy lately. This coming weekend, we have nothing planned, and we're like, we have nothing planned. You know, it's like we
Wow.
have nothing planned. You know, so yeah, yeah, we're looking forward this weekend.
Oh, you're gonna have an awesome time of not doing anything and finally relaxing, right?
Right.
Now, do you have any plans to move to Scotland at all or live there?
No, no, I would love to. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I love living in the States. I live in Houston, Texas. I love living in Texas. My kids are here, my family's here. I have some family in Oklahoma too, that I sometimes claim, some cousins that I sometimes claim, like poking fun at them. But no, no, we're very well settled in Houston, and you know, that the house that we're in, my husband and I purchased like 13 years ago, and it's probably what we consider our dream home.
Hmm.
We didn't build it, and you know, but I probably wouldn't have the guts to build something like this. But our backyard is an oasis. We have a pool, and it's got this large rock wall that's 30 feet long and, you know, 8 feet high, and waterfall treatments and whatnot. I feel very spoiled to have something like that. That's why I like going to my backyard, because it's kind of like this oasis of this.
Right.
Because and we when we were searching for the home, we called it the Hawaiian house, because it looks like you're when all the tropicals are going in the plants, it's not frozen here, and you know, because it is nice now. But you know, we hit January, February, and all the tropical plants just kind of go,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but now it's a lovely oasis. But you know, we're very comfortable here. But you know, it's we certainly love traveling. My husband and I travel a lot. We do little trips every 3 months, which I feel very spoiled about. We do 2, 3 big trips a year. The something like overseas, like the UK and Scotland and things like that, those are like once every 3 years. So we're debating between the UK and Ireland right now. So
Nice. I think I mentioned this before, but my husband wants to take me to Scotland. I have never been. He's been and he fell in love. He's like, I want to take you. I said, why haven't you yet? So maybe one day. One
maybe one
day.
day, you know, the one thing I want to do, you know, we went with the tour group, And that's nice. It was very convenient. There's pitfalls with that because you're with a group of people, and so you're subject to not only the group, but you're subject to what the group's agenda and plans are. There was a couple that we met that was also from Texas. They were from Dallas that we sat and talked with over dinner when we were in Edinburgh, near the end of the trip, and they had just flown in, rented a car. They're just winging it, and our first trip, I didn't feel comfortable doing that, but now I would go back. If I went back, I would go back. I would stay in Oban, which is on the Western Isles. It is called the Gateway to the Western Isles. It is a little port town. It is a very small town, but the whole town sits on the bay. So every building faces the bay. So your view is the bay. And so towards the west, towards the setting sun. And so I sat and we stayed at the Oban Inn, which I highly recommend. It was absolutely lovely. It was a beautiful little historic inn that had been remodeled. And we literally sat there for 2 nights and had dinner staring at this bay and the setting sun. And we were there in the summer, so the sun doesn't set till 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
And it rises at 3:30 in the morning because you're so far north. Just being there in the summer is an otherworldly experience because it's just everything's just very different there. But I would stay in Oban, and because this other couple had done this, they'd stayed in Oban for a while. And what they'd done was they just kind of hopped the Western Isles because there's the Isle of Man, there's the Isle of Iona, there's Skye, and there's hundreds of little islands out there that are just filled with history. There portions of them are almost not touched by modern man. They still have that feel about it. We did go to the Isle of Iona, and saw the Abbey, and that's featured in book 2. And it's just I would definitely love to go back and just run around those islands for a while and just experience that because it's beautiful. So you need to go. Your husband needs to
Yes.
take you. I would definitely do Oban. Glasgow was a lot of fun. It's very energetic and modern and artsy fartsy. It's very, very artsy. Edinburgh is very old, historic. You have this because there's Old Town and there's New Town. But Old Town has this very, it's just magical because it's so old. You can just feel it in the air. So yeah, you
Yeah.
need to go.
I'm gonna go. That'd be awesome. And then last question, just looking ahead to 2025. I can't believe it's like almost here, by the way. What excites you most about where the Stones of Iona and Dragons of Tantalon series are headed?
I'm first off, I'm floored that I still get to do this. I posted this, on Facebook when I was doing the release party for Thistle and the Mistletoe, which is just a couple weeks ago. I still stop. That's the 4th book I've published, and that's 4 books in my debut year. The first book published in March, so and that's 4. That's 4. When I signed that first contract, I was just ecstatic to publish 1. And now I'm looking at 4, and we're headed into, the 5th book and the 6th book, and the series is finished, and this concept of I get to share all these stories and do all this is in sight. And, the series itself, I don't know if we'll get the entire series out in 2025. That's kind of a tight schedule there. It'll definitely be by 2026. And we'll start the Dragons of Tantalon in 2026. And it's just, to this day, it still floors me. I have to pinch myself. I have to stop and say, wow. And there was, I have to share this with you. I was in the middle of the 2 weeks between releasing Lust and releasing Thistle and the Mistletoe. And it was just every day. It was just, it was so much to do, and it was almost overwhelming. And, you have to stop and go, okay, step 1, step 2, you got to break everything down. And I remember getting up one morning and just going, oh man. I turned to my husband and said, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through today. And he goes, you need to remember that there was a time that you dreamed of this, that you begged for this moment, that you dreamed of doing this. This is your dream. No matter how tiring, how hard it is, this is what you dreamed of. So you need to go do it. And it was like, that was the fire. That was what I needed. And it's unbelievable. But I'm so excited because it's like, there's times that I'm writing a book because now we're getting, when we get into Stone of Doubt, we're getting into a book that I wrote after I signed the contract, the first contract with Wild Rose Press, and same with Thistle and the Mistletoe. I wrote that after I signed the first contract. And there's times where I look at a book and I'm writing it, and it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to finish. And gosh, am I ever going to get past this point? And there's this and there's that. And I don't know if this is going to work. And I finish the book and then I publish the book. And it's like, it's like, wow. So I'm ecstatic and excited, and it's a dream.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing. I will be there too, but one book at a time for me. I'm still, just keep me in your thoughts because I'm still struggling with my first book. Um, Now, where can our listeners go ahead and explore more about your books and check out your latest releases and stay updated on what's next?
Sure. My website is Margaret Izard Author. That's Margaret, MargaretIzard, author.com. I keep that up to date on a regular basis. My socials are always Mizard Author. That's Mizard Author. You can find me Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've got a number of different Facebook parties coming up. So I suggest that you definitely check my socials. I've got a couple of book tours going on right now with Silver Dagger Book Tours, where I'm doing some giveaways. One of my favorite things, I started this with Stone of Love, and it's kind of caught on. And so now I've got them for every book. And what I do is I do a book swag box, and it's packed full of stuff. It's got a wine glass, it's got a metal insulated wine glass, a shot glass, the book, a book bag. It's got some little trinket or something that has to do with the book. Stone of Lust has a dagger necklace. Thistle and the Mistletoe has a crystal toe Christmas ornament that's a crystal ornament that's got mistletoe on it. That's one of my personal favorites. I have a number of them in the house. I have them for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. So I have a number of different parties that I'm doing. So you definitely need to check out my socials, find out where I'm going to be, what's going on, how much fun I'm having, and I want you to come join in.
Join the party with Margaret. Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on my show again. And congratulations. This is amazing. I'm so happy that you are where you're at. It's huge accomplishments, and I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Thank you. I'm really excited too. So y'all come on by and stop by and see how much fun we're having.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Margaret.